It's time for the Phil Ferguson Show.
This is Phil Ferguson, and you are listening to the cleverly titled Phil Ferguson Show. This is show number 196. We've got a couple of fun things for you today. Later on, we are going to talk about how astronomy can save the world. The author of that book, Daniel Batcheldor, is going to join us for a nice long interview about astronomy and how it can save the world. Really good fun. I also have a little bit later here, before that big interview, a little rant about how to pick good mutual funds. We're going to talk specifically about U.S. stock market mutual funds and how they try to but cannot match the market. So that's going to be some fun. And before we get into that, I have a little thing here from a website called OpenFolio. And you can go there yourself, openfolio.com. It's a very neat site where people can go sign up on their own and add their investments and link it to their accounts and track what they buy and sell so they can compare their performance to other people. It is curious. It used to say they had over 80,000 people signed up, but now it says they have over 70,000 people signed up. So I don't know what happened there, but it's at least 70,000 people. And I would assume that there is some selection bias here, that people that think they're terrible at stock picking aren't going to sign up for something like this. I would wager that the majority of the people that sign up for this think they're at least average or better than average. And so these results should reflect better than average results. And maybe the reason it went from 80,000 to 70,000 is people got sick and tired of seeing how they're underperforming. So the worst people dropped out. I don't know that for a fact. I'm hypothesizing. Well, what is interesting is I regularly state on the show, based on what I've read in books, including Common Sense on Mutual Funds by John C. Bogle, that the average investor underperforms the stock market by about 4% per year. And this year is no different. Matter of fact, it's even worse for the individual investor. But it's funny, I saw this headline that said 77% of investors made money in 2016. 77% sounds pretty good. Well, what's the norm? I honestly don't know, but it does mean that 23% of investors lost money. 1 out of 4 people lost money. How did the market, I got my little scare quotes up because we're radio, how did the market do? Well, not the whole market, but as measured by the S&P 500. The S&P 500, because it's easily trackable and you can go look it up and all kinds of things, it went up 11.96%. Well, let's call 12. The market, as measured by the S&P 500, went up 12%, but yet 1 out of 4 investors lost money. What? That means 1 out of 4 people underperform the market by at least 12%. And usually when people are stock picking, they don't have a diversified portfolio, so they're subject to more volatility, more ups and downs in the short run, and at least as measured by 1 year, far less returns in the long run. I know 1 year is not the long run, but it's the data set that I have from OpenFolio. They do actually have 2 years of data. And just for reference, the previous year, the S&P 500 barely squeaked out a positive return. However, most investors, as measured by OpenFolio, lost 4 to 5%. The total over 2 years is the S&P 500 is 13.53, and the average investor is 1.86. 13.53 versus 1.86. So 2 years of struggling, 2 years of time and effort and doing research. I would assume you're doing some research, picking stocks. or your broker is picking stocks for you, or your broker is relying on data from their brokerage firm to pick stocks for you. They don't know what they're doing either. It is very, very difficult to beat the market. So you spend extra time, extra money, and if you're in a taxable account, you are creating expensive trading activity as well as taxable events. Short-term gains, if you made any, are paid at a much higher rate than long-term gains. Personally, I don't think that should be the case, but today it is. So if you have a generously good income between you and your significant other, and your marginal tax rate is 28% or higher, that's what you're going to pay taxes on your short-term gains. Or you could buy and hold and pay normally 15%, unless you make close to $500,000 a year, then you're going to pay 20%. So do you want to pay 30-something or 15%? I'd choose the 15 if I can, if it's legal, and it doesn't take a whole lot of effort. That's why you buy and hold. And part of skeptical investing or science-based investing is looking at the data. The data says, once again, individual investors underperform the market. The long-term data says 4% per year. In this case, it is about 10, 11% over 2 years, so more than 5% per year. And in the 1 year time frame, why this 1 year is different, I don't know, because there is fluctuation year to year. 12% versus 5%, an underperformance of 7%. So most people don't do poorly because of downturns in the market. While those are painful, that's not what kills you. It's not making money when the market goes up. When will that be? I don't know. But sometimes it goes up. Sometimes it goes up a lot. And you want to make sure you get the most of that you can. I am convinced, and I think the data agrees with me, the best way is to buy and hold. Don't thrash around. Don't create a lot of activity. Now, there are some caveats to that, like everything. Sometimes there are things that you can see that are going to be problematic. Long-term bonds, we've talked about that on the show for a long time. They've not done particularly well lately, and we'll talk about that in a future show. And probably what I'll do in the next episode is I will break this down further. I'll break the S&P 500 down into smaller pieces, like large caps versus small caps, growth versus value, the different bond indexes, and international and real estate. So if you're really into that, I'll talk about some of those specifics next month. But the S&P 500 as the really quick and easy way to measure, 12%. Now, if you have some of your money in real estate and international, which made less than 10, you should expect some kind of blended return. So 8, 9, 10, 11, 12%, totally reasonable returns for a very diversified, long-term, not close to retirement kind of portfolio. If you are close to retirement or in retirement, of course, you probably should, but everyone's situation is different, have a portfolio that is somewhat, slightly, or significantly more conservative, depending on your circumstances. And maybe you've only made 6 or 8 or 10%. Again, not so bad. But look at your year-end statements. They're going to come soon. Some of them will have a very handy what you made in the last 12 months. Some don't. So do the math on it. If you get stuck and you're not sure how to do the math on it, let me know. You can email me, Phil at Polaris Financial Planning, and I can help you. You can look up the individual funds on Morningstar's website. There's all kinds of ways you can do it, but be careful and make sure you understand what you are measuring. There is Yahoo and Google and many other places will track mutual fund performance. And if you put it in the mutual fund, you might look and say, wow, it made 8% over the year. You have to understand, does that include the dividends or does it not include the dividends? It is very important that for stock funds that can be 1.5%, 2.5%, maybe 3% if it's a fund designed to buy high dividend stocks. So it can make a significant difference. But if your portfolio lost money, and of course 1 out of 4 people did, I don't know what the fuck is going on with your portfolio, and you better figure it out because you've missed a lot of money that's just there to take. If you're doing stock picking or you have someone doing stock picking for you, did you significantly underperform the market? You might want to think about fixing that. If you've done great, awesome. You can let me know. Maybe you have some information you can share with us. It's all about the discussion. It's all about the data. And of course, you can get individual situations where someone made 25% this year because they had half their money in 3 stocks and they're a lucky bastard and it happened to go up a whole lot. Well, congratulations. I'm very happy for you. Odds are it won't continue over time. Maybe, just maybe, you are the exception. But for most people, it's just not going to work out. You spend extra time, effort, money, and pay higher taxes, all to achieve lower than average returns. So we're going to talk next about how to pick mutual funds or why you can't pick mutual funds. And someone that contacted me that did significantly underperform, at least with only a few days left in 16. I did record that little rant a few days before this opening segment, so it was before 2017 had started, so I didn't have the finalized numbers, so they might sound a little different. But we have that, and then we are going to talk about how to save the world.
An atheist loves his fellow man instead of a God. An atheist thinks that heaven is something for which we should work now, here on earth, for all men together to enjoy. An atheist knows that he can get no help through prayer, but that he must find in himself the inner conviction and strength to meet life, to grapple with it, to subdue it, to enjoy it. An atheist knows that only in a knowledge of himself and a knowledge of his fellow man can he find the understanding that will help to a life of personal and societal fulfillment. An atheist then seeks to know himself and his fellow rather than to know a God. An atheist knows that a hospital should be built instead of a church. An atheist knows that a deed must be done instead of a prayer said. An atheist strives for involvement in life and not escape into death. He wants disease conquered, poverty vanished, war eliminated. He wants man to understand and love man. He wants an ethical way of life. He knows that he cannot rely on God, cannot channel action into prayer, and that there is no hope for any troubles, solutions in a hereafter. He knows that we are our brother's keeper. He knows that we're the keeper of our own lives, that we are responsible people, and that the job is here, and the time is now.
And now it's time to talk about mutual fund selection. It's something I go over every once in a while, and often it's motivated by something that, for example, just happened to me. I had someone listen to the show in the last week or two and said, Phil, you've been talking about the really good returns for 2016, 8, 10, 12, 14, 17%, depending on what part of the market you're looking at, and it really matters. Now, those are U.S. stocks. International and real estate are plus or minus 9 to 10, and a lot of bond funds either have made next to nothing or lost a lot of money. And we'll talk about that more some other times, what to do with bonds and if you're close to or in retirement. But this segment, I'm going to focus on U.S. long-term stock investing mutual funds. And one of the problems that we have in this industry is that mutual funds often pick and choose different stocks, and sometimes they can do really well. Sometimes they can beat the market. Sometimes they can beat the market for years and years until they don't. And sometimes when they don't, it's very annoying and catastrophic. So what can happen is if you go to see an advisor, and I use that term very, very loosely, a salesperson is the more appropriate term, they often do not know what they're doing in terms of investments and how the industry works and how markets work and how mutual funds work. The interesting thing is they do not need to know how those things work. What they need to do to get paid is to sell you. That is their job. That's why they are salespeople. Their job is to have you sit down, and we're going to use a case of $100,000. And they want to convince you that they actually do know what they're doing. And one of the things that they do to do that is they pull up all of the mutual funds that they have access to. And again, this is something that they may not have access to everything. You probably don't have access to everything because there's different games and some companies have partnerships and relationships with other companies. So you can't necessarily buy anything you want. But often an advisor, if they work for a big brokerage firm, companies whose names you know, who have offices and street corners with a nice leather sitting room and a chandelier with crystal and beautiful prints on the wall, they often have relationships with different mutual fund companies, and so they sell those mutual funds. They're paid by those companies to sell those specific mutual funds. Someone just told me that they loved my phrase, and I don't know when I said it last. People work for who they are paid by. So if your advisor charges you nothing, if you're not paying them directly, they do not work for you. It is like the idea that if you go to an auto dealership, almost all of them, I'm sure there's some exceptions, but Chevy, Ford, Toyota, Nissan, you go in there and the person helps you for free, right? They don't charge you anything. You don't pay them $300 or $400 or $500, but you know, or at least you should know, that they work for the dealership. They are there to sell that brand of cars. And most people understand that. Most people expect that. And you can take that into account and you can survive and you can get through the confrontation or the negotiation or you can let them provide you service because you know what to expect. Do not forget that when you see an advisor that works for a brand name brokerage firm. They work for somebody. They are paid by somebody to do something for you or to you. And so one of the tricks they often use is they will look at all the funds they have available and they'll pull up track records. 1, 3, 5, 10-year track records of mutual funds to show you how amazing these funds are. And they were amazing. And, of course, they may have 500 funds to pick from. They pull out the 10 that you can look at. Now, okay, maybe they have 30 or 40,000 funds they can look at. Let's say they can look at everything because there are databases that they get. There's a database that I get. There's different companies that produce these. They're kind of expensive, so you're probably not going to buy it. But you can look at 30 or 40,000 different mutual funds and put in any kind of filtering criteria that you want. Let's say 10-year past performance. And you can pull up a fund and look at its 10-year past performance and say, wow, this fund is cracking. This fund is crushing the competition. This is the fund I'm going to put you in. Why did it beat the 10-year market? I don't know. They don't know. You don't know. They came up with a neat thing and suggested it to you. And so what I have in front of me is an account that someone sent me that they invested, about a year and a half ago. And when they met with their advisor, every single fund that they put them in beat the market averages, beat the segment averages, beat the sector or whatever they're supposed to be competing against over 5 and 10-year average. Absolutely an amazing collection of mutual funds. Their performance so far this year in 2016, with a couple of days left, and maybe this comes out in the first week of January, but it still applies. There might be a tweak of 1% or 2%. Their account is slightly down. Their account is down about 1% for all of 2016. And just to give you a comparison, as of today, and the year-end numbers may be a teeny bit different when they come out, the S&P 500, which is the 500 biggest companies in the United States, is up 13%, give or take, for 2016. And the extended market, which is everything in the United States except the 500 biggest companies. So it's everything that's considered mid-cap, small cap. That means medium-sized and small companies. That is up 17%. So in an environment where the U.S. market is up between 13 and 17%, as of the last couple of days of 2016, this person lost money for all of 2016. So you think, oh, okay, what were they in? Was it international? No, international's up. Was it real estate? No, real estate up. Bonds? Okay, bonds did bad, but they're not in bonds. They're in stocks. They're in stock market funds. So what are these horrible, horrible funds? So I am going to give you an example or two just to show you how this game works. So over the last 10 years, this fund, this is a Goldman Sachs Small and Mid-Cap Growth Fund. Now, I'm not particularly picking on Goldman Sachs because you can do this with lots and lots of funds. And this advisor, a year and a half ago, went through this list and found this fund that a year and a half ago had a 10-year track record showing that it was beating the S&P 500 by 2% per year for the last decade. That's amazing. It's rare. It's impressive. Absolutely fantastic results. And so you put your money in it. The problem is that these mutual funds have managers and they have humans and they buy and sell and they do certain things. And sometimes they win. And sometimes if you win once, say, for example, in year one of that 10-year period, and the market goes up 5%, but your fund goes up 25% because you only had a handful of stocks and you're a lucky bastard and you happen to pick a couple of big winners, you really beat the market by 10, 15, 20% in 1 year. If you can just match the market going forward after that, you'll stay ahead for a long time because you start with a much bigger number. It's an amazing thing, and this often happens right after a big downtime like in 2008, because what will happen is some mutual funds got lucky or were just incompetent and had half their money in cash, or were in bonds when they're supposed to be a stock fund when the market goes down. Maybe they predicted it, but they can't be right all the time. And this is why trying to time the market generally doesn't work. Are there exceptions? Sure. Are you going to find those people that are the exceptions? Maybe, but how do you know in advance? You can only know by the track record. That's why I talk about it's really boring investment advice. Invest, save, keep costs low. Don't pay loads. Use index funds. Slow and steady. You're not going to beat everybody. But if you can beat 90, 95, 98% of all our investors, for the love of crap, how much money do you need to make? It just relax and don't try to outdo everybody. But this fund, and I'm going to give you the symbol here, it's GSMAX, because part of investing skeptically, you can go look it up yourself. My favorite site is Morningstar because you can get all kinds of data about mutual funds from an independent source. And I'm looking at the Morningstar page right now, and it shows that over the past 10 years, it's beat it by almost 2% a year. A year and a half ago, it had beaten the previous 10 years, because we're shifting everything back a year and a half, by more than 2%. Great small cap fund. This is called, again, the Goldman Sachs Small/Mid Cap Growth A. And we'll talk about that letter at the end for a second here. If your mutual fund has a random letter at the end, usually it's A, B, or C. But it can be T, R, L, Z. It doesn't matter. That means generally it's a load fund. In this case, it's a 5.5% front-end load. If you invest $100,000 in this fund, you will pay $5,500 up front as a one-time fee, a load, for the privilege of having this incredibly market-beating fund. But it's okay because you want to be in it because it's crushing the stock market. Well, guess what this fund did so far in 2016 with only a day or two of business left? Its 1 year total return is 0.25%, and that includes the dividends that all these companies may have paid during the year. 0.25% return, and it is a small cap fund, so it's most reasonable to compare it to the small cap or extended market index. And that index, as I said before, is up 17%. They have underperformed their market segment by 17% in 1 calendar year. And this is what can happen if you try to pick hot mutual funds. There is no pattern of funds that beat the market in the past, therefore beating the market in the future. And I've done very specific shows on this in the past where funds that beat the market for long periods of time tend to actually underperform going forward. It's a loser's game. It's like going to the casino and red won on the roulette wheel last time, so you bet on red. Odds are red is not going to win because there's black, and I think it's green. I'm not much of a gambler because I know the odds. You're going to lose your money. Mutual funds kind of work the same way. There's no way to know that they're going to do better because of past history. I used to do that long time ago, 20 years ago, but now we don't engage in that. You stick to the indexes and you make what the market is going to make, and you keep your taxes low. You find IRAs, Roth IRAs, 401ks, 403bs. You avoid taxes, you avoid expenses, and you make as much as you can. But in the end, part of how to money, step one, of course, is to spend less than you make. I know it's trivially simple, but sometimes it's really hard to do. And two is to invest smart. And three is time. It's just how it works. It takes a long time for most people to build a reasonable portfolio. That's why you don't often find a 22-year-old that has $500,000. But if you find people that got good education and good jobs, and hopefully they had a leg up to start with, because sometimes there's unfair advantages that people have, you can end up with a lot of money if you save a lot over time. Of course, then you can get to a problem where you don't have a proper balance, because I actually have people come to me that have more money than they're ever going to need, and they're not enjoying any of it now because they're always waiting for tomorrow. That's rare. For most people, I have to yell at them to save more money. So this is one of the examples that this person had. It was a great fund based on history. As soon as they put their money in it, it wildly underperformed the index. All right, I'm going to pick on a second mutual fund now. This one is called Hartford Growth Opportunities A. Again, A, it's a load. This case, 5.5%, $5,500 you pay for the privilege of buying this for every $100,000 you invest. Its symbol is HGOAX. Go look it up yourself. Morningstar.com, anywhere else you'd like. Go to their website. They have to publish these performance numbers. And this is another fund that beat the market over 10 years. Historically, a year and a half ago, when it was suggested to this person. Some other interesting things, you can find this very easily at Morningstar. Its expense ratio is 1.12%. The average mutual fund, that U.S.-based mutual fund stock market, around 0.4, 1.5, 1.6%. So this is not horribly high expensive, but when you can get index funds that are 0.2, 0.1%, why pay all this money? The turnover rate on this is 93%. And again, turnover means the percentage of the investments that are bought and sold within that calendar year. 93%. They are not buy and hold. If you buy and sell 93%, you're a trader. That's fine. If you like that strategy, I do not. I'm really, really boring investment advice. Buy and hold, buy and hold. Sometimes we make adjustments, but they're small and there's reasons for them. 93% means that 93% of everything you bought earlier in the year, or at least late in last year, you now think is crap and you should sell it. Well, what are you buying? Why do you buy stuff that a year later you routinely think is not worth owning? So that is not only a bad sign for the trading activity, but it creates trading costs and trading expenses, transaction costs, all of which you pay. Hartford doesn't pay for that. You do. You pay for everything. Even when you think it's free, you pay for it. You're the customer. That's how it works. The other thing is that if you are in a taxable account, if you are making a good income, a six-figure income, if your marginal tax rate is 28% or higher, plus your state tax if you live in California, or some other states that have really high taxes, you could lose 28, 30, 35, 40% of your growth if you make money that year because of taxes. If you're in an IRA, it doesn't matter. But sometimes people have money that's not in an IRA or a 401k, so the taxes can take away a big part. So even if you do beat the market, if you're not on a taxable account, you still lose compared to being in an index fund because your tax rate is so high. It's ridiculous. Now, this fund, again, over the last 10 years, when it was suggested to this person, had beaten the market over the last 10 years. The interesting thing is almost all of that market-beating performance came in the years 2006 and 2007. What that fund did in that time frame, I do not know. I could possibly dig in and find it out. I don't know that I care, so I'm not going to. When 2008 came, it lost a bunch of money just like everything else, and it kind of matched the market since then. But because it did so well in 6 and 7, it still looks like market-beating results over 10 years, because technically, mathematically, it is. But it's not like it beats the market by 1% every year, ongoing. It beat the market by 8 or 10% over a 2-year time period. And then it matched the market. Well, until this year. And so this year, the results of this fund for 1 year, for the 1 year time period is negative 0.28%. And so, again, while the U.S. is up 13 to 17 for large cap and small cap, this fund lost money, even with dividends. You have to really make some effort to lose money, or you have to be in the wrong place. Now, another thing that I don't like about a lot of mutual funds is that this is a U.S.-based mutual fund. It is growth opportunities, but sometimes they go into international. They might have 10, 15, 20, or even 30% international. Well, how do you know how much of your portfolio is international if one or more of the funds that you have can willy-nilly change the percentage of international that they own? And it also has a little bit in bonds right now. What are the growth opportunities in bonds? Not very much. So why are they buying bonds? Why is this a bond fund? It's not a big percentage, but sometimes I'll see funds that jump around and change their asset allocation. They go from a bond fund to a stock fund. This is very common with a strategy called tactical investing. We've done shows on it in the past. We'll do it again. It doesn't work. If someone suggests that you have a tactical fund, you should leave their office. It's a fantasy. It doesn't work. They jump around. Everything is traded multiple times during the year. Wild underperformance, terrible tax consequences for you, and the result is it doesn't work. So anyway, enough of my ranting. These are a couple things to look out for. It's the end of year season. Please, when you get your mutual fund statements or your brokerage statements in the next couple of days or couple of weeks, pull them out. Look at them. They may not have the percentage that you made in the last year. That's fine. You take the dollar amount you had on 12/31 of 15. You take the dollar amount that you have on 12/31 of 16, and you calculate the percentage. You don't have to get real fancy. You can do that. If you don't know how to do that, or you don't want to do that, contact me. It's phil@polarisfinancialplanning.com. Do not send me the statement first. Please, at least make sure you have actually sent an email to me. I will call you. We'll talk. If you still want to, you can send me the statement. You can tell me the numbers. We'll type them into a calculator. In Excel, we'll figure out your basic percentage. But if you're primarily in the United States market and you're not close to retirement and you have a reasonably decent percentage in international and real estate and some other investments, maybe you only made 11, 12, 13% this year. That's fine. You have a broadly diversified portfolio. But if you are primarily in the United States stock market and you made nothing, you made 3%, you're going to need to ask why. There may be a good reason. I'm going to have a challenge in trying to figure out what it is, but it may mean that you have bad investments. And this person, unfortunately, had a portfolio of about 10 different mutual funds. Every single one of them had a track record of beating their segment. Amazing list of mutual funds historically. But the next year going forward, every single one of them dramatically underperformed. And now I have somebody with a $100,000 account that made no money when the market's up 13, 15, 17%. And it's one of the things that I tell people, most people don't do poorly in the long run because they lose on the occasions when the market goes down, because it does, and it will. They lose because they don't make money when the market goes up. And this is one of those examples. So Hopefully the person that sent it to me, who I've not named on reason, is not upset with me. It happens all the time. I see it on a regular basis, almost every week now. But learn from this. Try to find index funds, control your costs, et cetera, and we'll go into our break now, and hopefully you enjoy the interview. I'll talk to you later. This is Phil Ferguson with Polaris Financial Planning, the home of science-based investing. I see people owning really bad investments all of the time. Many advisors are paid a commission by a big company to sell you something you may not need. It's kind of like church. They create fear, then they tell you what you want to hear, and then they take your money. What you want is an advisor that is paid only by you. That is a fee-only fiduciary advisor. Remember, people work for who they are paid by. You can contact me, Phil, at PolarisFinancialPlanning.com, or listen to the cleverly titled The Phil Ferguson Show. Each show, we have an interesting investing skeptically topic and an interview with someone fighting to end religion. Polaris also gives 10% of gross revenue to support the growing secular movement. You're not just getting better investments, you're helping to change the world. All right, everybody, welcome back. This is Phil Ferguson, and you are still listening to The Phil Ferguson Show. With me today, I have author and I guess Daniel. What else are your titles?
Well, I'm an astrophysicist, Phil.
Astrophysicist, all right. And he has recently published the book called Astronomy Saves the World, Securing Our Future Through Exploration and Education. Welcome to the Phil Ferguson Show, Daniel.
Well, thanks very much, Phil. It's a pleasure to be here.
And in case you're looking on Amazon or any other fine bookstores, listeners, it's Daniel Batcheldor, Batcheldor, Daniel Batcheldor. See, I got at it right all those times, and then I fucked it up. So
never mind.
So you've got this book. Where'd the idea for this book come from?
Well, I've been teaching astronomy and astrophysics now for over 10 years. And every year I've been teaching it, I've been noticing how the ability of students coming into our programs have been shifting. And we're seeing a kind of a change in the skill sets that these students are coming into college with out of high school. And they're starting to lose that type of critical thinking ability where they look at a problem, they evaluate the evidence, and they come up with a reasonable solution to that problem with the information given. And as I've taught astronomy and astrophysics more, I've realized that pretty much all of the tools you need to become an effective critical thinker are actually the bedrock of what is necessary to become an astronomer or an astrophysicist. And so the other thing that really gets me about astronomy is that people are drawn into it, especially when they're 12 or 13 years old. They see these beautiful pictures coming from the Hubble Space Telescope, and they say, "I want to know more." And that is a great way to engage a young mind into a subject that promotes critical thinking. And this, of course, is one of those threads that plays a fundamental role in the secular movement itself.
Now, of course, you've already completed a Kickstarter. Is it closed now?
It is. The Kickstarter was successfully funded back in March.
And you made this video by yourself?
Yes. Yeah. I spent some time on Shutterstock and some time with some Adobe products and some time under a towel with my iPhone doing the voice recording and then stitched it all together.
Because what I'd like to do, just to give people a feel for what you're going for, I want to play this because I really, really am amazed by this, and I don't know if you have done other video editing before, but this worked out really, really well.
Well, thanks. Yeah, go ahead.
All right, let's see if we can get this to work. And, of course, is this on YouTube as well, or is it just at the fundraising page?
No, it's on YouTube as well, yes.
Okay. So this is from the Kickstarter project, but you can find at YouTube. You can search Astronomy Saves the World to get all of the visual imagery that goes with this. But I'm just going to play the audio version, and I'm stalling here while I get everything set up here. But this is pretty amazing, so I'm going to see if I can make this. There it is. Shh.
Astronomy. It is the science we've been doing since becoming human. It is the science that guides us towards our origins. It is the science that propels us towards our future. In a society torn apart by redundant theologies and maniacal egos, astronomy humbles us, inspires us, enlightens us, and binds us. It shows us the fragility of our home world and the fatuity of neglecting its future. Our thin intellectual veneer is repeatedly punctured by fatal ignorance. And yet our understanding of our universe is profound, our technology progressive. Never again should our planet experience a catastrophic cosmic impact. And those ancient harbingers of death have now become rich resources waiting to be reaped. We are on the cusp of becoming a multi-planet species. We are ready to start populating the rest of our solar system. But our future, and the future of our children, is hopeless without a well-informed and cohesive global society. A global society that raises reason over revelation and is insulated against anti-intellectualism. A global society that has the universal right to a free and secular education and the motivation to take it. Astronomy is the great educational motivator. It drives a love of learning and a passion for knowledge. It is rich with history, science, art, engineering, music, and mathematics. It is the lesson for all humankind. Astronomy can raise us above belief-based homicidal squabbles. Astronomy can be the key to comprehensive emancipation via education. Astronomy can provide us a globally united path into the deep future. Astronomy can save the world.
Dude, that's beautiful. And you did that, what, in a day?
Oh, no. About a week. About a week.
After seeing that, I almost wished you had a TV show. Is that next?
Well, we'll see. Yeah, no, the most amount of time was spent actually lining up the soundtrack with the visuals.
Yeah.
So that you get that change in the music just as a visual is coming on. So you match what's being seen with what's being heard.
It's a podcast, so they can only hear it. But yeah. I'm serious. You might even want to pause the show and go watch the video and come back, because how it lines up. And if you don't mind me saying, this kind of gave me a throwback feeling to the original Cosmos.
Oh, well, thank you very much. That's high praise.
Well, it's one of those things, because I saw the title, and I think you were maybe being a little cheeky with Astronomy Saves the World. But the funny thing is that when I was 13 and I was in confirmation with the Methodist Church, I was also every week going into my parents' bedroom. They had a second TV back then. It was a 13-inch black and white TV. And every week I watched Cosmos. Yeah. And every week I watched Cosmos, it made more and more sense. And every week I went to confirmation, it made less and less sense.
Yeah, yeah.
And Carl Sagan and Cosmos very specifically helped me lose my faith, my belief in religion. And so you're absolutely right. Astronomy can save the world. So you had this idea for the book, and how is it structured? What's the overall format of the book?
So I try to lead the reader through descriptions of scientific facts about our place in the universe, without them necessarily needing to have any mathematical background. So if you were to approach a random person on the street and ask, for example, can you prove to me that the Earth isn't flat? Generally, people struggle to do that. They do not know how we have known that the Earth is not flat for thousands of years. Now, of course, in today's technological society, we can say, obviously, the Earth isn't flat because it's obvious. But,
Right.
every statement needs to be backed up with evidence. And now, in our technological society, we've got pictures of the Earth from space, right? We've put things into orbit. We see ships disappear over the horizon. If you go up onto higher ground, you can see further and things like that. But to the everyday person, proving that the Earth is not flat is as simple as sticking two sticks in the ground and seeing the different lengths in the shadows. Now, you can move this forward. You can then say, okay, so now prove to me that the Earth is not the center of the universe. What evidence is there that you can explain to me, that you can show me that demonstrates that Earth is not the center of the universe? And then you can go on to say, well, what evidence is there that the Earth is not 6,000 years old? Can you explain to me or demonstrate to me how it is we know that the Earth isn't 6,000 years old? And then we get into how do you know we're all made of star stuff? How do you know that the universe is 14 billion years old? So each step through the book is leading the reader through all of the arguments that have basically been used to deconstruct all of the theological reasons that have been used to indoctrinate people into the religions by saying, we don't understand our cosmic origins, therefore God. Well, I'm sorry, we do understand our cosmic origins. It's quite simple. And what I've tried to do in the book is lay out all of that evidence so that people can basically shield themselves against this encroaching level of anti-intellectualism that we're seeing.
Well, it's interesting. That does tie back again to Cosmos, because Carl Sagan did show how to find out the size of the Earth, like you said, with sticks. And It also made me think of, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the book, A Short History of Nearly Everything by Bill Bryson.
Bill Bryson, yeah.
I thought that, and I'm going to get the kind of feeling, I think, from your book, is that either one of these should be mandatory in high school.
Absolutely.
Because we sit kids down and we have them memorize the order of the planets, and we have them memorize the different types of rocks, but we don't go through the thought process of how did we get to this point. My son, when he was 13 and he was in confirmation, his minister told him that scientists use carbon dating to date the age of the Earth, and it's filled with errors. And now my son, who was wickedly smart, said, no scientist uses carbon dating to date the age of the Earth. And the minister says, yes, they do. And my son says, no, they don't, because it's effective 35,000, maybe 50,000 years at most because of the decay rate.
Right.
And the minister goes, what? And my son said, you're just repeating things that you heard, but they're not real.
Right.
And that's a little bit of knowledge that when someone throws that out to you, if you know that, and so it looks like we've got three main parts in your book, and part one is the problems. What are the problems?
So the problems are this encroaching sense of anti-intellectualism and the shrinking ability of people to think critically. So given some quite obvious pieces of evidence, people will still not change their mind based on evidence that's given to them. And then the other problems are the problems that are given to us by the universe itself. So the first chapter in that first part about the problems is the problems that we have as humans with our way of thinking and our shortcomings in our education. The second chapter is about the avoidable problems. So these are problems that we are facing with regards to the evolution of our own planet, climate change, and with the potential impacts from comets and asteroids and with then the unavoidable problems, which is the long-term problems that we're going to face living on the surface of this planet. So we are in orbit around a star that is going to evolve to a point where it's going to sterilize the surface of the Earth. So we either have to move the Earth or move people off of the Earth. And so this is the part one of the book is kind of setting up the problems. And then part two is actually looking at the principles, the tools that we have to address these problems. I break it down essentially into chapters based on topics within physics, and mathematics. So we start off with a little bit of simple mathematics to describe how far away things are, and then a little bit more mathematics and critical thinkings to actually establish the scale of the universe itself. And that plays over into chapter 6 as well, when we have to actually take another look at scale in order to understand exactly how big our universe is and exactly how old the universe is.
Now, one of the things, I'm going to jump in here and dig a little deeper. In chapter 4, one of the things you talk about in that subsection is Earth is not flat. And it's embarrassing that in possibly the most financially affluent country in the world, in the history of the world, we actually have to discuss this.
This is incredible, right? Because if you are a flat earther, this is what you have to believe. You have to believe that essentially every single human being on the surface of the planet is involved in a conspiracy theory against you personally. Because you could have a flat earther in New York call at, say, 8 o'clock in the morning Eastern time, a flat earther in Los Angeles, and ask them, where is the sun on the sky? And to be a flat earther, the flat earther that you called has to lie to you. So not only does the evidence from ships disappearing over the horizon, being able to see pictures of the Earth from space, being able to put things into orbit. So, of course, if you're a flat earther, all of the rockets that get launched into space...
Where do they go?
Exactly. Right. So the rockets that we are launching out of the Kennedy Space Center every other week, all of that's just rubbish, right? They're going somewhere. They're obviously being exploded or landed somewhere. All a massive conspiracy theory that we're spending trillions and trillions of dollars on. Yeah. So you've got all of this evidence, and yet there are still people that will not believe it. And we've gone through. I mean, today we've had some absolutely today has been a terrible day for this type of lack of thought into what's been going on in the world and how people have applied that to decisions that they've made.
Well, the flat earthers are obviously laughably silly, and thankfully their numbers are relatively small. But the thing I deal with more often is the creationists, and the particularly the young Earth creationists, who adamantly say that the Earth is 6,000 years old. And we even had a guy in Kentucky spent almost $100 million freaking dollars to build a boat. What do you think about that?
This is just another side of the same problem. There is a mass of evidence to show that there is absolutely no way that the Earth is 6,000 years old. I mean, it's crazy. It is comparable to a flat earthers. So flat earthers say 200 years ago, 300 years ago. Okay, there's a little bit of credibility there, but creationists are today's flat earthers.
Yeah, it's staggering, and their ability to hold on to it. And it's not necessarily an intelligence thing. It's a way of thinking thing that they're smart enough to build arguments to support their position, but it's just an argument. It's not facts. But we have facts, right? I mean, I know that we do, but tell me, as the author, we have facts that the Earth is old.
Yes, absolutely. It's incontrovertible. But, a lot of it comes down to that people don't like to be told that they're wrong, and they would rather insulate themselves against changing their minds rather than actually admitting that they may have made a mistake.
It's an amazing thing. I also see here, you've chapter 6 is space and time, and 7 is fair and balanced. Is that a wink and a nod to something?
It is.
Well, tell us about fair and balanced.
So one of the fundamental principles that we teach in physics is that a system is typically in some kind of balance, is in equilibrium. So if you come across a system that isn't changing or appearing to change, then we know that there has to be some balance between forces. Because if one force was winning, then that object would be changing in some way. So one example is the sun. The sun doesn't appear to change significantly over time. There are small changes in the surface. There are some sunspots. There are some coronal mass ejections, some solar flares. But on the whole, the sun remains about the same brightness day after day after day. So it has to be in some kind of equilibrium. And so the sun has a lot of mass, which means it has a significant amount of gravity. And so that force has to be balanced by something. And that force is actually the force that results from the nuclear fusion that is taking place at the core of that star, of our sun. And so a fair and balanced system in astrophysics is one where you see that things aren't changing. And so this is a fundamental principle that we apply in physics in order to help us solve physics problems. So when you see that there is an imbalance in something, then that will cause the system to change. So when you run out of the fuel at the center of a star, then that star is going to collapse and actually essentially collapse in on itself, bounce back out. And if the star is big enough, it'll explode in a supernova explosion. But you need a star about 10 times more massive than our sun to do that. So these principles can then go and be applied to everyday situations, right? So it's just one of those examples in nature that can be used in a much broader way to perhaps be helpful to people in everyday life.
Well, and one of the themes that you have throughout, and we heard it just a few moments ago in the video, is we can have a world where we have differing opinions, schisms, religions, fighting each other over unsubstantiatable opinions, or we can move to a reason-based, a secular worldview, a factual-based worldview. And that, in your opinion, I'm sure you're going to say yes, makes the world a better place and a safer place.
Absolutely. And we've seen this throughout history. As our scientific understanding has improved, as our understanding about our place in the universe has improved, our need to rely on the answers given to us through Scripture has started to dissolve. And we've now reached a point in society where the authority that comes from Scripture is no longer needed. And we are on the cusp of moving into a post-theistic society where we no longer need religion in order to have a understanding of our cosmic origin and also an understanding of where our morals come from. So these are the two arguments that the theological community has: is we have the answer of why we're here, and we have the answer of why there is good and evil. Well, now you don't need a God to explain that, because we have a thorough enough understanding of our universe and the cosmic origins behind our universe and how we got here to make all of those explanations that come from Scripture unnecessary. And now we have a good enough understanding, I think, but I'm not an expert in this area, but I think we have a good enough understanding of why we know right and wrong inherently, and we do not need to be told what is right and wrong by an authority. And if you remove the need for a supernatural explanation about our cosmic origin, and you remove the need for a supernatural explanation of what is right and wrong, then there is absolutely no need for religion in the first place, it would seem to me.
Well, I hope this is all true, but there seems to be a lot of religious people in the world, and the United States, they seem to have enough pull to put Donald Trump in the office.
Right. Well, I don't think it's a coincidence that the various faiths actually require some kind of official statement of faith from children when they are around 12 and 13 years old. I think they know quite well that 12 and 13-year-olds are very impressionable, and things that they learn at that age and experiences that they have at that age impact them for the rest of their lives. And so if you are a 12 and 13-year-old and you are being confirmed in one of the faiths, then that is something that's going to be very difficult for you to shake later, because you're going to have to essentially be told that you're wrong over and over and over again. And that's not necessarily going to be the best way forward in order to help that young person change their minds. If instead at schools we were teaching critical thinking abilities at 12 and 13-year-olds, imagine what a difference that could make. Instead of learning the order of the planets or learning the different names of rocks, if we were teaching kids how to read up on credible sources of information that's presented to them online, for example, if we taught them to make sure that they were looking at more than one source, to weigh evidence critically, to be to actually realize that just because you've been told something by an authority figure does not mean that it's true. If we were teaching these types of skills, it wouldn't take that long. It would take less than a generation in order to shift society, particularly in the West, away from this kind of wishful thinking that we see, particularly in theological circles, but also you see it you see it spilling over into political circles as well. I mean, we just saw the election of an obvious fraud.
I think so, yeah.
How on earth did that happen? People were shown the evidence, they were given all of the information they needed, and yet they still blindly followed with what they thought was right, even in the face of evidence that showed that it was wrong.
Well, my big concern was that when he lost, he hopefully could go away, but you still had 45% of the population that voted for him. That's the problem. But now, unfortunately, we still not only have the 46% that voted for him, but he won. And so now what happens? Any concerns that you have from the academic side, from the scientist side, at how this new presidency might affect education in our country?
Yes, absolutely, a massive concern. Education is where it starts. Now, I grew up in the United Kingdom, as you can probably tell, and I kind of became politically and socially more aware in and around the time Tony Blair was the Prime Minister, and he ran on a platform of education, education, education. And whether or not you agree with everything that Tony Blair did, I think that he was spot on with you have to go into the education systems and start at a grassroots level with a foundation of secular education, not indoctrination. And so I think everyone knows this. The church knows this. The government knows this. If you want to create an army, you start with the children. It's horrible to think of it this way, but we see this time and time again. And so we have to find a way as a secular community to get in at the grassroots and do what they have done, which is get to the education system ourselves. Now, thankfully, most of it is on our side right now, but we need to fundamentally overhaul the way children are being educated. And by that, I mean, I'm very taken with the explanations that Sir Ken Robinson has used to criticize the Western education system, which is built on an industrial system whereby you put a child on a conveyor belt when they're 6 years old, and at the other end of the conveyor belt off should drop a physics professor. And if any point they fall off the conveyor belt, in some way that child has been a failure. But we know that children do not learn that way. Children learn through experience. They learn through experimenting with things that interest them, and different things interest different people. We need an education system that recognizes talent and passion at a young age and cultivates that, rather than beating into people that don't want to do history or don't want to do mathematics. Let's not beat that into them. Let them find their talent so that they can be the best person, and probably most importantly, be a happy person as they get older. And so I don't think that it's just about changing curriculum. It's actually about changing our entire approach to education. And I think astronomy is a very good way to start to approach that, because it has the arts. It has an element of the art with the beautiful pictures that we see. It sparks a sense of wonder, the sense of wanting to know more. And by wanting to know more, you need to understand a little bit of basic mathematics, a little bit of basic trigonometry. You need to reorientate your sense of scale away from the few mile scale that you experience every day in your life to the hundreds of millions of kilometers scale that you need just to get to our sun. You need to reorientate your scale of time as well. We have the privilege of perhaps spending around about 100 years on the surface of this planet. That's absolutely nothing compared to the timescales that even the continents on our own planet experience, let alone the planet itself, our sun, our galaxy, and the universe. And so I think astronomy is a great way to introduce all of the essential skills that you really want a 12-year-old to have. So as they grow up, they can appreciate our place in the universe, what it means to be a human, what it means to be one human in a society of 7 billion others, and what it means to not work towards personal wealth, but to share the experience of being part of this planet, and not to go after this kind of selfish me, because the types of things that are going to happen to our planet in the future are things that we need to work as a planet together to prevent. Climate change, potential impacts from comets and asteroids, and actually getting people off the surface of this planet and permanently onto the surface of another planet. These are things that we have to come together to solve. And these are things that people genuinely find exciting. And so, yeah, I think astronomy has it all. Well, and that's kind of why I wrote the book.
Yeah. It's interesting. For years now, I've been promoting the idea that as a secular community, dare I say it, an atheist community, we need to get into the schools and educate children. And like you said, not indoctrinate, but in my vernacular, inoculate. And I'm surprised the amount of pushback that I get from that, because a lot of people see that as doing the same thing that religions are doing. And I will grant that in a way it is, but because, like you said, they have already recognized if they can get to that 10, 12, and 13-year-old and control their thought process, they can, in a way, own them for the rest of their lives. We need to get in there as well. We can't wait until they go to college. We can't wait until they go to high school, because not everybody makes it to college. Not everybody makes it through high school. We need to go down where they are.
Right. Yeah. So we can talk about if they go low, we go high, but that doesn't always work.
Right, and one of the things I've always promoted is this idea of someone organizing, I don't know if you're familiar with vacation Bible schools over the summer.
Oh, yeah.
Well, for about 3 years, I helped run one. That's another story for another episode, but a lot of the students, a lot of the kids that come to those are brought in by well-meaning parents, almost always the mom, but not necessarily, who just says, for an entire day, I have my freedom back because the kids are out for summer, and so I'm just going to send them to this local church. It's harmless. It's just this cute little church, and they'll go there and they'll have fun. And 2 weeks later, they come to the little ceremony at the end of the service, and they watch all the kids put on a show and sing songs. And I've seen it. I've seen the parents who sit there and their eyes get really big, and they're horrified what their kids are saying, what their kids are singing. And sometimes those kids go home and go, Mommy and Daddy, I don't want you to burn in hell.
Right.
And where is the summer science school? Where is our program? Where is our way to help parents get a week or two of freedom from their kids, where we can teach them all these things that are in your book, so that they can understand what it great experiment for 4th or 5th graders or younger to use a couple of sticks and measure shadows and figure out how you can find the size of the Earth. Absolutely amazing.
Now, there are those types of programs growing within the secular community. I can't remember the names of them off the top of my head, which I'm a little bit ashamed of now, actually.
Well, if one of the listeners figures it out, let me know, send me a message, and I'll add it to the notes of this episode, because I'm drawing a blank. I would love to be wrong and that there's something growing. So listeners, let us know, and I'll be able to share it with everybody.
You're going to get a message real quickly about this one, because the name of it's on the tip of my tongue, and I am very sorry to the group that I can't remember the name of.
That's all right. We'll fix it in post.
Secular summer school. Yeah.
Well, what else should we know about the book?
It's Camp Quest. There you go. I remember Camp Quest.
Yes, you're right. Camp Quest is like that, but I was thinking, something much more. They're doing summer camps, and you're right. That is exactly what I'm talking about. But I want it in every neighborhood, every small town in America, not something you go away for 2 weeks, but where the mom and dad can just bring the kids at 8 in the morning, and they have their entire day free, and they come back and they get, Johnny and Susie at 3:30 in the afternoon, and it's just a fun thing for the kids to go to, and everybody's doing it. But Camp Quest is amazing, but I want it that full scale, like Vacation Bible School is everywhere.
Right. Yeah. Well,
what else do we need to know about the book?
So the final chapter is where I think the final chapter is where people are going to start to see that this book is aimed at the secular community. Now, I did have a bit of a hard time trying to hold back from really letting a lot of my anger about what I see in education. And I had some very good editors that helped me organize those thoughts in a way that is a little bit more constructive than it may have been. And by that, I mean not turning people off who may be persuaded by the arguments. So we talk about essentially how we can fight for the type of knowledge that's necessary to improve people's ability to think critically, and so we don't end up with another Donald Trump. Just getting all of the intellectual armor that you need in order to spot when somebody is bullshitting you. I mean, I had no idea. I was absolutely convinced that Donald Trump was not going to be elected to the presidency of the United States.
I'm with you.
And now that it's happened, I wrote a little note in the first book that I got printed. I said, I think we need this now more than ever. Well, I think we need the message of this book now more than ever.
I was just thinking, about 8 years ago, I was virtually in tears because America had progressed so far forward that they elected a half black man.
Right.
And just recently I was almost in tears because what we have now. So it's a step forward, a step back. I hope it's that simple, but not worse. I know I've got a lot of listeners and a lot of friends on Facebook that are on the verge of panic, and I don't know that it's inappropriate, but we've got to focus. We've got to figure out how to solve the problem, recognize the problem, and fix it. And like a lot of people say, don't let it normalize. Fight it. And a book like this is a way to do it. And right now it's only in hardback. Is that correct?
Yes, it's in hardback right now. And the Audible version will be coming out as soon as I get the studio time and get it edited. So hopefully February, maybe March in 2017. Is there a Kindle version? Hopefully a paperback in the near future once the hardback has run its course.
How about Kindle?
Oh, yes, and Kindle as well. Funny story about that. It's quite difficult to get the correct fonts for all of the symbols you need to be cross-platform. So it's taken a bit of time, but we're very nearly with the Kindle and the Nook edition as well. So the EPUB and the Mobi. And that's actually the last bit of the Kickstarter I still need to fulfill. And so I'm a little bit embarrassed for the backers there that they've got the PDF, but they don't yet have the ebook versions, and we're very, very close on that. I appreciate everyone's patience.
We were talking a little bit in the pre-show that the book has diagrams, but it doesn't have the gorgeous pictures that we're talking about that sparks the imagination. What's the rationale for that?
So this is a self-published book,
right.
Which meant that the funds available were the funds generously donated through the Kickstarter community, and that didn't stretch to being able to secure the rights and secure the additional funds needed for color printing and all of the copyright issues that go with including other people's artwork. So the diagrams that I've written in the book, drawn in the book, are purely functional. They are to help the reader understand the principles that are being presented in that chapter. So they're ones I did. They're fairly clunky, but I hope they make the points that are trying to be made. We saved the one beautiful picture for the cover, and I'm very proud of the cover. Some tremendous work was done by the cover artist there. And I think it beautifully illustrates some of the artistry that comes from astronomy itself, and then also the tool that has been used to get all of those beautiful images, the Hubble Space Telescope. And so what we've done, the idea behind the cover art was to put the Earth inside Hubble. We call the astronauts that worked on Hubble the Hubble huggers. And so that's people from Earth hugging Hubble. But I think what Hubble has done, the Space Telescope, is given us appreciation of our own planet. And it actually helps us hug our own world by putting us in our cosmic place and showing us that our little pale blue marble is very fragile and needs to be looked after.
Now, where can listeners find more about you?
We're the internet age, so I can just be Googled.
Yeah, you do come up pretty close to the top, if not the top.
I think so, yeah.
Do you have a Twitter or Facebook or anything like that?
Yes, I'm on Twitter at Dan Batcheldor. My Twitter handle is, and then I'm on Astronomy Saves the World. The book is on Facebook as well, and you can simply go to danielbatcheldor.com to get a direct link to the Amazon, the YouTube video that you showed, and that we listened to, and some more details about me, myself, and I.
Great. Well, Daniel, thank you for being on the Phil Ferguson Show. Hopefully, the listeners get a feel for this and go buy this. And share it with their friends and maybe even their kids. I really, really look forward to, sadly, I didn't have the chance in advance reading this or maybe at least hearing it when it comes out in audiobook. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for your time, Phil.
You're listening to The Phil Ferguson Show.
The history of discovery, particularly cosmic discovery, but discovery in general, scientific discovery, is one where at any given moment there's a frontier. And there tends to be an urge for people, especially religious people, to assert that across that boundary into the unknown lies the handiwork of God. This shows up a lot. Newton even said it. He had his laws of gravity and motion, and he was explaining the moon and the planet. He was there. He doesn't mention God for any of that. And then he gets to the limits of what his equations can calculate. So can't quite figure this out. Maybe God steps in and makes it right every now and then. That's where he invoked God. And Ptolemy, he bet on the wrong horse, but he was a brilliant guy. He formulated the geocentric universe with Earth in the middle. This is where we got epicycles and the machinations of the heavens. There was still a mystery to him. He looked up and uttered the following words: when I trace at my pleasure the windings to and fro of the heavenly bodies. These are the planets going through retrograde and back. The mysteries of the earth. When I trace at my pleasure the windings to and fro of the heavenly bodies, I no longer touch earth with my feet. I stand in the presence of Zeus himself and take my fill of ambrosia. What he did was he didn't invoke Zeus to account for the rock that he's standing on or the air he's breathing. It was this point of mystery. And in gets invoked God. This, over time, has been described by philosophers as the God of the gaps. Mm-hmm. If that's where you're going to put your God, in this world, then God is an ever-receding pocket of scientific ignorance. If that's how you're going to invoke God, if God is the mystery of the universe, these mysteries, we're tackling these mysteries one by one. If you're going to stay religious at the end of the conversation, God has to be more to you than just where science has yet to tread. So to the person who says, maybe dark matter is God, if the only reason why you're saying it's because it's a mystery, then get ready to have that undone.
All right. Hopefully everyone now knows how to save the world with astronomy. And I've got a few things to follow up on before we end the show today. I did get an email from a listener. We'll call him Steve. And he says, Phil, love the show. On your latest show, you touched on early retirement and SEPP. That's substantially equivalent to periodic payments, also known as the 72T rule. Let me go back to the email here. You use the example that if you want to retire at age 55, this is the only way to access retirement funds before 59.5% penalty-free. What about early withdrawals from a 401k if separation of employment happens on or after the age of 55? Well, Steve, you are absolutely correct. And if I did indeed say, which I don't doubt Steve at all, that IRA, pulling out money from the IRAs is the only way to get money. Hopefully what I said, or at least what I'd like to think that I meant to say, was that from IRAs, that's the only way to do it. But he is absolutely right. If you have a 401k with an employer and you leave that employer at the age of 55 or beyond and retire, you will be able to take money out of there early without the 10% penalty. So thank you, Steve. That may help some listeners. If you've had a job for quite some time and all your money is in a 401k, that could be much better choice for you. So thank you, Steve, for that. Also, I had put out a request for people to go to Stitcher and write reviews. And wow, thank you for so many reviews. We now have quite a few there, and it looks like 2 new ones. And one's real short, so I'll just read it to you. And the other one's a little long because I've got quite a few getting the problem of too many reviews. But thank you. Keep sending them because it helps other people find the show. And if you enjoy the show, I do not have an account where you can go donate money to help support the show. This is how you can help me by giving reviews. So on Stitcher from Donald112, Phil does a great job presenting important financial information and helping people stop believing in the supernatural. Great job. Keep up with the work. Another one from SMACN 27076. I've been listening for about a year now. Phil's approach to investing makes a lot of sense, and even when it's beyond my understanding, at least I've got an idea of what I ought to be learning. And when I talk to my own financial advisor with a big firm that Phil doesn't like, I've got a better idea of how I should approach the subject on my retirement planning. Excellent. And he did express some concerns about the second part of the show, picking on religion as low-hanging fruit. I agree in a way, but there's still a lot of religious people, so I enjoy doing that. And he also did express some concerns about language. So that has come up again, but I'll try to keep it reasonable, but unfortunately for him and some other people, that is the way that I talk. It's just kind of what it is. Maybe I'll make it better someday, but I wouldn't count on it. And then, of course, we have a couple more reviews at iTunes. LL, I guess it's Llama Guy at 89. Love the podcast. Phil is down to earth and very helpful. Short and sweet review. Thank you very much. Another one from Disc Golf Donovan. Donovan, if you're anywhere in Illinois, let me know. Maybe we can get a game of disc golf. It's something I used to do on a regular basis, and I just haven't. I need to get back and do that. Really enjoy that fun game. I'm not particularly good at it, but it is a nice excuse to go out. And regular golf, I can't. I don't know what it is, but sorry, golf lovers, I can't do it. But anyway, this is his commentary. Phil gives some of the best investment explanations based on facts only. Well, I try, but thank you, Donovan. Explains money concepts in simple English and interviews some of the top secular people out there. If you like scientific investment advice and love great questions given to the secular movement, and having it all done in an entertaining fashion. Phil is your man. Thanks, Phil, for making all of this easier and saving me money just by listening to you. Well, thank you. That's what we're going for. The show, of course, is free, and like I said, I don't even accept donations through any of the platforms that collect that kind of stuff. If you would like to make a donation to American Atheists or the Secular Student Alliance, there are links to that on the show's blog page, which is under PolarisFinancialPlanning.com. It just moved, so hopefully everyone is hearing this show correctly. Otherwise, that is all I have for today. Thank you so much for listening to the show. I appreciate all of the feedback, even some of the negative ones, but it's good for me to learn too. I can make mistakes and I can improve, and it is a joy to know so many of you, and hopefully I can see you at a future convention. That is it for now. Ciao.